A word of welcome and a word of thanks to Father Brad Krofchek. Some of you may recognize him a bit. He was here at St. Monica a little bit during your seminary formation, correct? And he is now Director of Liturgy at St. Francis Seminary, and he was a little wayward. He didn't have a parish to go to tonight, so he's here joining us, and we are pleased and happy to have him. He would be able to tell you that in the Roman Missal, to describe moving into the homily for this Mass, the Mass of the Lord's Supper, it is entitled, the Roman Missal gives an instruction. And I commented on this last weekend on Passion Sunday because it said, if necessary, you should give a brief homily. So tonight it says you should give a homily focused on three elements, the three important elements of the evening. Now, nowhere else in the Roman Missal, nowhere else in the instructions for Mass that I'm aware of, Father Brad could correct me later, and he will if he can, I'm certain, does it tell us specifically what to preach on. It'll say preach on the Scripture or preach on the mystery of the day, but it gives these three elements with great detail. It says preach on the Eucharist, preach on the priesthood, preach on the servant leadership, the way that Jesus gave the disciples the commission to do as he has done. These are profound, profound realities. Now, the first two seem to us, when we say that this is the night of the Last Supper, seem very appropriate, the priesthood and the Eucharist. But then the church throws us a curveball. The church throws us a curveball. There are three Gospels in which we see and read the story of the institution of the Eucharist, where it actually says, this is my body, take this and eat. This is my blood, take this and drink. But the church decided on the night to celebrate the priesthood and the Eucharist, we won't use that Gospel. In fact, the Gospel of John has no narrative of the words of what we now use in the Eucharistic prayers. We actually have to hear that in our letter to the Corinthians tonight. That's actually the first written recollection of what happened in the upper room. That remembrance of these are the words, these are the prayers, these are the commands that Jesus gave. The epistles of Paul were written a couple of decade or two before the Gospels were put down in writing. So it's important that we remember that by Paul, who heard it from someone else because he wasn't there. That primary importance, that premier importance given to the Eucharist. But now the church wants us to preach on these three subjects using a gospel that really doesn't touch on two of them directly. It obviously lays out that third most significantly. So now I have to figure out how to tie them together in a way that makes sense to me and makes sense to you. The Lord and the church want to challenge us all every once in a while. Now, let's step out of that dilemma for a moment. Growing up in Brookfield, Wisconsin, where we had half-acre lots and, kind of space in between all the homes, I got to be honest, as I go back and think about Elm Terrace Drive, the street where I grew up, other than people that I had some other connection to, I couldn't name everybody on my street. And I don't know if you can. Maybe I have this idealized notion that every place should be a little bit like Mayberry, and everybody knows everybody else. Or at least everybody knows everybody else because I think it was Gladys was the operator, could tell everybody about all the gossip in town. But I knew the people who were immediately adjacent to us, the Tepetsits. They were on one side, they were Greek Orthodox. The Wants, they were on the other side, they were Methodists. Across the street were a family called the Blessings. I knew them because the girl about my age was my first crush, but that's a homily for another night. Down another door away were the Argues. They went to Elmbrook Church, but Steve was my age, so he was one of the first kind of friends that I had in the neighborhood when we moved in. Now, other than those, I'd have trouble kind of remembering who's who and where, other than, the families that were at the parish with us, the families that were in the school with us. I knew the connections. I don't know if that's as common today or better here in Whitefish Bay or harder here in modern times. I know everyone's willing to kind of have that neighborhood, well, we'll put everything out on the internet, or we'll talk about it that way. Or now the way to kind of be that neighborhood presence, as I drive around sometimes and I see balloons and I see things like that, happy 50th birthday to somebody. Or I see the signs, a graduate from this school or just started at the school or a sports champion. We have to put it out there because we don't necessarily have those more intimate, more personal connections. We have to put something out there so that the world might see it and recognize it. I wish it were just the personal knowledge that we had of one another, but maybe it's important that some sign be put out there. That leads me to tonight's first reading, that celebration of the Passover. See, the angel of God is going to come so that there may be this process of pressing and pressing and pressing the Egyptians to allow the Israelite people to go free. And so what the Lord said to the Israelites, you heard it, kill the lamb, and with the blood of the lamb, mark the door frame, the columns, and the lintel, so that the angel of death would pass them over, hence Passover. And I often look at the readings and I kind of say, what jumps out at me is a little unusual. What jumps out is out of place. And I kind of ask myself when I think about that story of the Passover, why was it necessary? Didn't the Lord know his chosen people? We'll hear later in the gospel, the shepherd knows his own. Why was it necessary for that sacrificial lamb to be given and the blood to be taken and then to be placed? Not somewhere in the house, not in a little shrine, not in a little corner where they go to pray, but outside. Certainly the angel of the Lord that could appear anywhere. Gabriel we hear about, Michael or Raphael. They could get inside and see it, but it's on the outside. Why is that? Why is that? Because there was something required of the people of God, the people of that covenant, the Israelites, that had to be outward, that had to be an effort, that had to be a sign. There had to be something placed on the lintel, not just so the angel of the Lord would know which house belongs to whom, or that the people inside would remember, oh, that's my house. I can read the number or read the lintel now. But it was this effort to do something of great ritual, of purposeful sacrifice, and then of outward sign. Now, if that is our context for what is bringing together the disciples in the upper room, and we have this call, I have this call by the church to impart to you a depth and an intensity to celebrate the priesthood, to celebrate the Eucharist, and to celebrate what the Lord did with his disciples, for his disciples that night. It must have something to do with how, in an outward way, a statement is made. A statement is made to God. A statement is made to the messenger of God. A statement is made to the neighbors. A statement is made to self. So let's unpack that. This is the night we celebrate the institution of the priesthood, in the twofold way that the Lord did it at that table. First, by that sacrificial service. He was setting up for them that they were going to live a life from that moment forward that was profoundly changed. Oh, they may have had some human thoughts along the way. We're hanging out with the Messiah. They may have had a little bit of, anticipating. They might have been measuring the palace for curtains because the Lord was going to be the new king. But he said something different. And then he said, you're going to be a people of sacrifice and service, and you're going to be a people of of sacrament, of sacrament. And then he gave them the Eucharist, that other element we celebrate this night. He gave them the Eucharist, that they might always have, we might always have, the Lord present to us. That we might have the Lord renewed for us every time we go to Mass, every time we receive his body and blood. His body and his blood. There's that blood again. The blood of the Lamb again. The Lamb sacrificed. It's amazing how these things then become intertwined, almost circular. We wouldn't have a priesthood were it not for the provision of sacrament. We wouldn't have sacraments without the priest. We wouldn't have either one with any true meaning if it were not for the Lord's mandate that it be a sacrificial offering, that it be a service offering, that it be a profoundly humbling moment. A humbling moment. When you come up to receive, are you humble? When I celebrate, it may not seem like it some days, I apologize, but am I humbled? And when I go and I try, when we go and try and serve others, it's not just checking for the college application, it's not just fulfilling hours for confirmation or for honor society. Is it humbling because I need it to be humbling and I want it to be humbling? They all become intertwined. Do we live our lives in a way that, in an external way, in a way that is shared, others might come to understand that we, you and I, are a priestly people? We have priests who bring the sacraments. We believe in those sacraments. We live by those sacraments. We lift them up. Yeah, we put the balloons and the little signs out when a newborn baby comes, or we put the signs out or balloons out when we're going to have the family over after the first communion celebration or the confirmation. We do a lot for the weddings and for the ordinations. But do the very way we live our lives show the world that we are a priestly people, or at least a people dependent upon the priesthood? Not me, not Father Brad, but dependent upon what the priesthood is and brings into the church. Are we a people of the Eucharist? Are we a people who know that when we are nourished from this altar of sacrifice, we are transformed not only as we sit in the pews for a few more minutes after communion at Mass, we are a Eucharistic people when we are in the world. A people dependent upon Christ, a people nourished by Christ, a people hopeful in Christ. Are we a Eucharistic people? Eucharist is, I've said this time and time again, if you've ever come to me for confession. Eucharist is the Greek word for thanksgiving. Does the world know we are thankful for the Lord as he has come to us, as he has suffered and died for us, and as he has risen for us? And are we a people of sacrificial service? I'm asked to preach on the priesthood so that you might know its impact in your life. I'm asked to preach on the Eucharist so you might be reminded that what is an empty tabernacle right now should leave a hole in your heart and a wanting in your soul. And I am to preach on the way the Lord served and told the disciples, as I have done for you, now you must do for others. I am not going to tell you what the blood on the lintel needs to be in your daily life. I am only going to preach that the blood on the lintel and on the door frame needs to be there. Not because the Lord needs to see it. Not because the angel of death needs to see it. Not because you need to proclaim it that way, but you should. But because if we are a people of the priesthood and a people of the Eucharist and a people of service, in those things the blood of the Lamb is put on the posts and the lintel. In those things the blood shows. And so this night, when we are given these great signs, when we are given these sacraments, when we are given this reality of our faith in the church, our faith within the church, the question is, what is the blood in your life, in your home, in your family? What is the blood on the lintel? Will anybody see it? They should. I pray. I cajole. I encourage. This Easter, make sure it's there to be seen by a world that needs it. Blessings to you.